The moment you pull out your phone and press record, something changes. A police officer who was just speaking casually might suddenly stiffen. Their tone might change. Sometimes they step closer and ask a question that sounds simple but carries real weight. Why are you recording me? In that moment, a quiet tension appears. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Because behind that one question lies a legal issue that most people have never truly understood. Many people believe they know the answer. Some are convinced recording police is always legal. Others think it can get you arrested instantly. But the truth is far more complicated. Across the United States and many other democratic countries, courts have spent decades debating a simple question that touches the heart of civil liberty, technology, and the power of government authority. Can ordinary citizens legally record police officers? And if they can, why do conflicts over recording still happen every single year? Before we go any further, take a moment to think about this. If you saw police stopping someone on the street tonight, and you pulled out your phone to record the interaction, do you believe that would be completely legal, or do you think an officer could lawfully order you to stop? Let me know what you think in the comments, because the answer reveals one of the most quietly important legal principles in modern democracy, the ability to record the actions of public officials. To understand why this issue exists at all, we have to go back to a time before smartphones, before social media, before nearly every person in the world carried a high-definition camera in their pocket. For most of history, police encounters existed almost entirely in private memory. If someone claimed an officer behaved improperly, the only evidence might be conflicting stories. The officer might say one thing, the citizen might say another. Witnesses could disagree. And without clear proof, truth often became difficult to determine. This reality shaped public perception of policing for generations. Most interactions between citizens and law enforcement simply disappeared into memory with no permanent record. But technology changed everything. The first major shift came with handheld camcorders in the late 20th century. Suddenly, ordinary people could document events in real time. One of the most historically significant moments involving civilian recording occurred in 1991 in Los Angeles. A man named George Holliday stood on his apartment balcony and pointed his video camera toward a street below. What he captured became one of the most widely seen pieces of footage in modern American history. It showed several police officers beating a man named Rodney King after a high-speed chase. The video aired repeatedly on television and shocked millions of viewers. For many Americans, it was the first time they had seen a police encounter recorded from the perspective of an ordinary citizen. That footage changed the national conversation about accountability, policing, and the power of video evidence. But it also raised a deeper legal question. If citizens can record police activity, what exactly are the rules? Is it always legal? Is it sometimes illegal? Or does it depend on the situation? The answer lies within constitutional law. In the United States, many courts have ruled that recording police officers performing their duties in public spaces is generally protected by the First Amendment. The First Amendment guarantees freedom of speech and freedom of the press. But courts have interpreted those freedoms to include something broader, the right to gather information about public officials. Think about that for a moment. Journalists record government officials every day. News cameras film police press conferences. Reporters document arrests, protests, and court proceedings. If professional journalists can record public officials performing public duties, courts began asking an important question. Why shouldn't ordinary citizens have that same ability? After all, the Constitution does not grant freedom of the press only to licensed reporters. The Supreme Court has repeatedly recognized that the press includes the public, anyone with the ability to gather and share information. And in the smartphone era, that essentially means everyone. But while many courts recognize this right, the law also includes important boundaries. Recording police is not a blank check to interfere with law enforcement activities. And this is where misunderstandings often occur. Many legal cases have focused on the difference between recording and interfering. Courts have consistently ruled that citizens generally have the right to record police performing official duties in public spaces, as long as the person recording does not obstruct or disrupt those duties. That phrase, does not obstruct or disrupt, carries enormous importance. Imagine an officer making an arrest. If someone stands several feet away and records quietly, courts have often ruled that activity is protected. But if someone pushes close, blocks the officer's movement, or shouts aggressively while recording, the situation may change legally. In those cases, the issue is not the act of recording. The issue becomes interference. Understanding this distinction is essential, because many of the legal disputes surrounding recording police have involved situations where officers claimed the recording itself was creating a disruption. In several cases, courts had to examine exactly what happened. Was the person calmly documenting events, or were they interfering with the officer's ability to perform their duties safely? These questions matter not only for legal analysis, but also for public safety. Police officers often operate in unpredictable environments. Traffic stops, arrests, and investigations can escalate quickly. Courts have recognized that officers must maintain control of the scene. At the same time, democratic societies also value transparency, and that is where recording becomes powerful. Video documentation has played a major role in revealing misconduct, clarifying disputed encounters, and sometimes protecting officers from false accusations. In other words, recording can serve both sides of accountability. It can protect citizens, and it can protect law enforcement. One famous legal case that addressed this issue occurred in 2011. A man named Simon Glick stood on Boston Common, a historic public park, when he saw police officers arresting another man. Concerned by what he observed, Glick took out his phone and began recording the arrest. According to reports, he stood about 10 feet away and did not interfere, but officers arrested him anyway. He was charged with violating a state wiretapping law. The case eventually reached the U.S. Court of Appeals for the First Circuit, and the court delivered a decision that would influence legal thinking nationwide. The judges ruled that Glick had a clearly established First Amendment right to record police officers carrying out their duties in a public place. The ruling emphasized that gathering information about government officials in public spaces is a fundamental aspect of free expression. The court also noted that the officers involved should have understood that recording them in that situation was lawful. That case became a landmark moment in the evolving law surrounding citizen recording. But even after decisions like that, confusion has continued. Why? Because the law surrounding recording police is shaped not by a single national rule but by multiple court rulings across different jurisdictions, and although many courts agree on the general principle that recording police in public is protected, specific circumstances can still vary. Some states have wiretapping or eavesdropping laws that complicate the issue. These laws were originally designed to prevent secret recordings of private conversations, but in the past, some prosecutors attempted to apply those laws to people recording police officers. Courts have often rejected those applications when the officers were performing official duties in public spaces where there is no reasonable expectation of privacy. Still, the existence of these laws has occasionally created uncertainty. Another factor is the rapid pace of technology. When early wiretapping laws were written decades ago, lawmakers could not have imagined a world where millions of people carried instant video recorders. Today, recording is almost effortless. A single tap on a phone can begin streaming video to the internet instantly. This technological reality has changed how society documents public events, and police departments themselves have adapted. Many officers now wear body cameras that record interactions with the public. These devices were introduced partly in response to calls for greater transparency. Studies have suggested that body cameras can reduce complaints against officers and clarify disputed incidents. But body cameras also raise new questions. Who controls the footage? When can it be released? And how does official footage interact with civilian recordings taken from a different angle? Sometimes the two perspectives tell very different stories. That is why courts and researchers often emphasize the value of multiple viewpoints. A single camera rarely captures the entire truth of a complex encounter. Another issue arises when officers order someone to stop recording. Legally speaking, such orders are often controversial. If the recording is taking place in a public area and the person is not interfering, many legal experts argue that ordering someone to stop may violate constitutional protections. But situations on the ground are not always simple. Officers may believe a person is too close to an active investigation. They may worry about safety or crowd control. In tense moments, decisions happen quickly, and disagreements about those decisions sometimes end up in court. Over the past 2 decades, numerous lawsuits have been filed involving arrests or confiscation of phones from people recording police activity. In several cases, courts have ruled that seizing recording devices without proper legal justification can violate constitutional rights. Phones often contain large amounts of personal information, and the Supreme Court has recognized that digital devices require strong privacy protections. In 2014, the Supreme Court ruled in Riley v. California that police generally must obtain a warrant before searching the digital contents of a cell phone. That decision was not specifically about recording police, but it reinforced the broader legal principle that smartphones contain vast personal data deserving of protection. So where does all of this leave the average person who simply wants to document what they see? The key principle most legal experts emphasize is awareness. Recording police in public places is widely recognized as a protected activity in many circumstances. But that protection exists alongside other legal rules involving interference, safety, and reasonable police authority. Understanding those boundaries helps reduce the likelihood of conflict. It also highlights something deeper about modern democracy: transparency. The ability for citizens to observe and document the actions of government officials. For centuries, governments controlled most official records of events. Today, the public can create its own record. Sometimes those records expose misconduct. Sometimes they confirm that officers acted properly under difficult conditions. Either way, they contribute to a more complete picture of reality. Think about how many important social conversations in recent years began with a video captured by an ordinary person. Without that recording, the event might never have reached the public eye. At the same time, recordings can sometimes lack context. A short clip may show only a few seconds of a much longer interaction. This reality has led many researchers to encourage careful analysis before drawing conclusions. Video evidence is powerful, but understanding the full story often requires examining everything that happened before and after the camera turned on. Another interesting aspect of recording police is how it affects behavior. Psychologists sometimes refer to something called the observer effect. When people know they are being watched or recorded, their behavior can change. In some situations, this awareness encourages professionalism and restraint. That possibility is one reason many advocates argue that public recording contributes to accountability. But the relationship between recording and behavior is complex. Officers already operate under intense scrutiny, and constant recording can also increase stress during difficult situations. Balancing transparency with operational effectiveness remains an ongoing challenge for policymakers and law enforcement agencies. Some police departments have responded by issuing clear policies acknowledging the public's right to record. These policies often instruct officers not to interfere with recording unless it genuinely obstructs their duties. Other departments provide training explaining how to manage scenes where bystanders are filming. These efforts aim to reduce misunderstandings that can escalate into legal disputes, but public awareness remains uneven. Many people simply do not know their rights. Others may assume recording is illegal and avoid documenting events even when it would be lawful. This gap in understanding is one reason legal scholars and civil liberties organizations continue discussing the issue publicly, because when citizens understand the law, they can interact with authority more confidently and responsibly. So the next time you see someone holding up a phone during a police encounter, remember that moment sits at the intersection of technology, law, and civil rights. It reflects centuries of evolving ideas about how societies balance power and accountability. The ability to document authority is not just about cameras, it is about transparency, trust, and the ongoing conversation between governments and the people they serve. Now, I'm curious about your perspective. Do you think recording police officers helps improve accountability in society? Or do you think it sometimes creates unnecessary tension during difficult situations? Share your thoughts in the comments, because understanding this issue requires more than just legal rules. It requires hearing different experiences and perspectives. The law about recording police may seem hidden or complicated at first, but when we look closely, it reveals something fundamental. In a society built on democratic principles, the actions of public officials do not happen entirely behind closed doors. Sometimes, they happen in full view of the public. And in the modern world, that public often holds a camera, and that simple device in someone's hand may quietly represent one of the most powerful tools for transparency ever created.